Welcome to The Deep Dive, the show where we take the crucial research and surprising stories hiding beneath the surface and bring them straight to you.
Today, we are diving into a moment of really chaotic transition.
Yeah, the transfer of power in 2016.
Mhm.
Michael Lewis, he documents it so meticulously. It was less of a handover and more of a shocking institutional collapse.
That's the core tension, isn't it? His book, The Fifth Risk, it shows this wasn't just some political disruption.
No.
It was an active, and you could really argue deliberate rejection of the knowledge you need to run the single most powerful government on Earth.
It's incredible. The incoming administration didn't just, ignore the briefings. They seemed to view the entire idea of public service with suspicion, maybe even contempt.
And the stakes, they couldn't have been higher. We're talking about the systems that manage the nuclear arsenal,
Right.
that feed the nation's children and keep us safe from catastrophic weather.
Lewis starts the story by detailing the transition preparations, which, it's a process that's legally mandated to make sure that government functions like national security, food inspection, don't just stop on Inauguration Day.
He introduces Chris Christie, who volunteered to lead that transition team, and the task was just staggering.
The scope of it.
Think about it. Identifying and vetting candidates for 500 key federal positions. And we're not just talking about the big names, the cabinet secretary.
Oh, it's everything.
Everything, down to these crucial but kind of obscure boards, like the one that manages the Barry Goldwater Scholarship Foundation. Christie saw it as, the ultimate planning exercise.
But Lewis shows how that planning was just fatally undercut. We learned that Donald Trump had absolutely no interest in spending money on a transition team.
The quote is pretty damning right.
It is. Reportedly, he just erupted, demanding to know why Christie was stealing my fucking money.
And that just perfectly encapsulates the attitude. The central mechanism designed to ensure continuity and competence was immediately seen as just a waste of money.
An unnecessary cost.
Exactly. And that's the perfect setup for our deep dive today. Our mission is to really understand what Lewis calls the fifth risk.
Right.
These hidden systemic dangers that are created when government competence is purposefully, degraded.
I want to show you why the quiet, often invisible work done by career civil servants at places you've never thought about, like the Department of Energy or the USDA, matters directly to your safety and your everyday life.
It absolutely does.
Okay, so let's get into it. Lewis establishes right away that this failure, it wasn't an accident. It was rooted in things like personal vengeance and this deep institutional skepticism.
Yeah, the transition process that Christie built was, by all accounts, really rigorous. We're talking background checks, vetting hundreds of qualified candidates across dozens of agencies.
And then came the vetting vacuum, as Lewis calls it. It all started with Jared Kushner.
Right. And the source material is very clear on this. There was this old family grudge. It stemmed from Christie prosecuting and, jailing Kushner's father, Charles, way back in 2005.
So when Trump won, the transition leadership was basically handed over to a group that included Jared and Ivanka.
Which effectively gave the son-in-law control over this process that was meant to staff the entire federal government.
And the result of that influence was just catastrophic for any kind of preparation.
Christie and his whole vetted team were quietly fired. And those precious lists, binders full of qualified, prepared names ready to take the reins of government, were reportedly just tossed into the garbage.
Just think about the institutional knowledge lost in that one moment. All that work, hundreds of people spending months trying to find the best talent, just gone.
And the impact was immediate. It was chaos the morning after the election. Federal agencies all over Washington were prepared for a smooth handover.
The Department of Energy, which we're definitely going to talk about more in depth, had literally cleared 30 desks. They had prepared 5-inch thick binders detailing their huge, complex mission.
Obama had sent, 30 to 40 people for his transition? They were expecting an army of policy wonks to descend.
Day 1, nothing.
Silence.
Day 2, still silence. As one former DOE staffer put it, they realized they weren't waiting for a small army. They were just waiting for anyone to call.
That day after chaos was just radio silence and inaction across the whole federal government.
And even where transition teams did eventually show up, they were just woefully unprepared, which reinforces Lewis's whole point about the rejection of competence.
Oh, absolutely. The story at the State Department is a perfect example. A small group of incoming transition people arrive for briefings.
And the information they needed to get was classified. Essential stuff on global security, ongoing diplomatic crises.
Right, and not a single person on the team had security clearance.
You're kidding.
Nope. Nor did they have any discernible foreign policy experience. They were legally unable to receive the critical education they needed to run America's foreign relations.
Lewis really hammers this point home. This wasn't just ignorance or incompetence. It was an active hostility toward the very idea of institutional competence.
It was this prevailing, really toxic attitude that, and I'm quoting here, everything that government does is stupid and bad, and the people in it are stupid and bad.
Wow.
And when Jared Kushner visited the White House soon after the election, Lewis quotes an Obama staffer who said Kushner was surprised that so many career staff were planning to leave.
It's like he thought it was a corporate acquisition.
Exactly. Like the existing management would just stay put no matter what and keep this incredibly complicated machinery of state running smoothly.
And that failure to respect or even understand the existing staff, the career civil servants who are mission-driven and apolitical, that's what created this environment where expertise was just discarded.
And that's where the biggest, scariest risks suddenly became unmanaged.
Okay, so let's move to the Department of Energy, because this is where Lewis's analysis gets truly alarming.
It is, and the first thing you have to understand is that the name is completely misleading.
Right. Most people, they hear Department of Energy, they think of electricity bills or solar panels.
But Lewis reveals the hidden scope of the DOE is absolutely staggering. It is, first and foremost, the Department of Nuclear Defense.
That's right. He details that roughly half of the DOE's massive, $30 billion annual budget is spent entirely on maintaining, upgrading, and guarding the U.S. nuclear arsenal.
That includes funding the National Nuclear Security Administration, or NNSA.
And what do they do, exactly?
Well, the NNSA is responsible for some incredibly specialized, dangerous work. For example, $2 billion of that budget is just for hunting down loose weapons-grade plutonium and uranium around the globe.
To stop it from falling into the hands of terrorist groups.
Precisely. And Lewis emphasizes the sheer volume of this stuff. Between 2010 and 2018 alone, the NNSA collected enough material to make 160 nuclear bombs.
That is terrifying.
This is the ultimate tail risk that DOE manages. Low probability, maximum consequence.
And since the U.S. doesn't test nuclear weapons anymore, the expertise has to shift, right? It becomes deep theoretical science.
It does. The DOE relies completely on physicists at the 3 national labs, Los Alamos, Livermore, and Sandia, to perform these incredibly complex simulations with decaying nuclear materials.
So they have to certify that these aging weapons, some of them built decades ago, will still work as intended.
And, just as crucially, that they won't detonate by accident.
The book talks to Madeleine Cretin, who is second in command of the Nuclear Weapons Wing. She makes a really important point about this workforce.
She does. She explains that these people didn't start their careers wanting to be weapons scientists.
No, they were drawn to the national labs for big science.
Right. Studying the origins of the universe, working on supercomputers, pushing the boundaries of physics. It's this very specific, rarefied expertise that has grown over decades inside the institution. You can't just hire it off the street.
And the incoming administration just didn't seem to grasp that you cannot replace a nuclear physicist who's been simulating warheads for 20 years with a loyal political appointee.
And that brings us to what Lewis calls the attack on expertise during the transition.
The DOE's primary contact from the Trump team was a guy named Thomas Pyle,
a former lobbyist for Koch Industries and ExxonMobil, known for running what was essentially a propaganda machine that actively targeted the DOE's own climate research.
So his contempt for the agency was, let's say, evident from the start.
In his preparation, or lack thereof, he met with the outgoing Energy Secretary Ernest Moniz, a nuclear physicist with a profound understanding of the department, for just a single hour.
And he didn't even bring a pen or paper.
No. And critically, he asked no meaningful questions about the nuclear stockpile, the labs, or the international security mission. Lewis quotes someone saying he was not motivated to spend a lot of time understanding the place.
The ultimate sign of hostility came in that notorious list of 74 questions he sent over.
That list. While some were about policy, many were just political threats. They explicitly demanded lists of names of employees who had attended climate change meetings or UN conferences.
Lewis accurately called it McCarthyism. The goal seemed to be purification and punishment, not understanding and transition.
And Secretary Moniz, to his credit, flatly refused to answer those questions.
But the signal was sent loud and clear to the career staff.
The message was, "We don't value your expertise. We suspect your loyalty." And that immediately led to what Lewis calls the brain drain, the accelerated loss of essential, non-political people.
The story of Joe Hazier, the chief financial officer, is a perfect example.
He managed a $30 billion annual operation, kept the books balanced, a crucial and incredibly difficult job.
And he just left. Because despite the enormous responsibility he had, no one from the incoming team even asked him to stay on or sought his counsel.
It wasn't a political firing, it was a failure of outreach, a symptom of this attitude that this massive operation could just run itself.
And then there's the most dramatic near disaster. The story of General Frank Glotz.
Yeah, a retired 3-star Air Force lieutenant general. He was the undersecretary for nuclear security.
So he was the person ultimately responsible for the safety of the entire U.S. nuclear stockpile.
The whole thing. He submitted his resignation as required and was literally preparing to walk out the door.
And it was only because Secretary Moniz intervened. He urgently called U.S. senators to alert them that the nation's nuclear weapons chief was leaving with no replacement lined up.
Right. Only then did the Trump team act. They called General Klotz the day before the inauguration and, in a last-minute scramble, asked him to stay.
It just shows this stunning, almost fatal carelessness with the most sensitive national security concerns imaginable.
And this is why the creation of the chief risk officer role was so vital. This was held by John McWilliams, a former Goldman Sachs banker.
And his job was to catalog all the terrifying, catastrophic risks facing the department, what Lewis calls tail risk.
McWilliams categorized 4 explicit known risks the DOE was desperately trying to manage. The first was nuclear accidents.
He brought up the 1961 Broken Arrow incident in Goldsboro, North Carolina. A B-52 carrying 2 hydrogen bombs broke apart in midair.
And Lewis's source material provides the chilling detail. One of the bombs, as it was plummeting to Earth, actually armed itself.
It was designed with 4 safety mechanisms.
And 3 of those 4 either failed or were rendered ineffective by the crash. A single low-voltage switch was the only thing that prevented the detonation of a weapon 250 times more powerful than the Hiroshima bomb.
Right in the middle of North Carolina.
That near miss is exactly why the DOE's safety device design expertise is non-negotiable. You need top-tier physicists for that.
The second explicit risk was geopolitical nuclear risks.
Right, and this isn't just about deterrence. McWilliams noted that the DOE's national labs are crucial for monitoring global threats.
Like analyzing North Korea's missile experiments.
And providing the technical expertise to police the complex Iran nuclear deal, making sure Iran couldn't cheat and surprise the U.S. with a secret weapon.
Okay, what's the third major risk?
This one has a terrifyingly high consequence, but it's a slow, sprawling problem: nuclear waste.
The WOPP facility accident in 2014 is a great example of
A
this.
terrible example, yeah. A federal contractor used organic kitty litter instead of inorganic kitty litter to pack volatile waste.
That sounds like a small mistake.
A simple, preventable mistake that caused a drum to burst. That one act of negligence shut the facility for 3 years and cost $500 million to clean up.
But even that is small compared to the long-term disaster at Hanford, Washington.
Oh, Hanford is on another level. It produced 2/3 of the plutonium for the U.S. arsenal, and now it contains what's basically an underground glacier of radioactive sludge.
Tanks full of highly toxic waste, and they're slowly, inexorably moving toward the Columbia River.
The cleanup of just that one site is conservatively estimated to take a century and cost over $100 billion. It's a slow-motion catastrophe, and it was all driven by poor program management in the past.
And McWilliams' fourth tail risk.
Electrical grid vulnerability. Our entire society runs on this deeply fragmented, vulnerable electrical grid. He pointed to the 2013 Metcalf substation sniper attack in California,
Where a knowledgeable sniper took out 17 transformers in a targeted, sophisticated strike.
and if that was executed more broadly, it could have caused immense economic damage, and that's just a physical attack.
Right. Lewis also highlights the constant cyber intrusions.
In 2016 alone, the DOE counted 500,000 cyber intrusions into various parts of the U.S. electrical grid.
And the critical point McWilliams made is that there's no private sector solution for this.
None. The grid is too fragmented, too regional. Only the federal government, through the DOE, has the authority and expertise to coordinate security and share threat intelligence. It's the only hope for a coordinated defense.
McWilliams used a graph to plot these risks, probability versus consequence.
And he coined an acronym for the quadrant of high probability and high consequence. You know, these large, poorly managed projects. He called it BAFU. Billions and all fucked up.
It's these projects where bureaucratic inertia and short-sightedness just guarantee massive cost overruns and eventual failure.
But then Lewis pivots beautifully to the core thesis of the book, the fifth risk.
The risk we don't easily imagine. McWilliams identified this as program management.
So it's not an event like a bomb exploding.
No, it's the systemic failure that's inherent in managing long-term problems. Lewis defines it as the risk a society runs when it falls into the habit of responding to long-term risks with short-term solutions.
That's the Hanford problem.
Exactly. Delaying essential maintenance on a tunnel full of lethal waste until it collapses.
No.
Or the aging DOE workforce losing track of nuclear material because nobody asked them to stay. It's the constant erosion of competency in the face of these huge multi-generational problems. And it's also the active destruction of future solutions.
Oh, absolutely. The elimination of ARPE, a small but vital program, speaks volumes. It was a high-risk, high-reward funding agency for energy innovation, the DARPA of energy.
It had a tiny budget, right, like $300 million.
Trivial in the grand scheme, but it funded these incredibly ambitious ideas.
Like making fresh water using sunlight.
Or genetically engineering a specific type of bug to eat electrons in crap oil, which would effectively turn electrical energy into sustainable fuel.
People like Bill Gates and the founder of FedEx, Fred Smith, they championed this program. They saw it as this vital engine for economic and environmental breakthroughs.
And yet Lewis notes that in the first Trump budget, ARPAE was targeted for total elimination.
Why? Why would you do that?
Because the knowledge it generated made life messier for those with a short-term fossil fuel-centric worldview. Lewis suggests this is the upside to ignorance.
If your ambition is to maximize short-term gain without regard to the long-term cost, you are better off not knowing the cost.
Exactly. Knowledge complicates things. And the desire here was clearly to simplify the world by gutting the very systems designed to manage long-term complexity.
Okay, let's shift from the nuclear arsenal to our food supply. Let's talk about the Department of Agriculture, the USDA.
Right. And here, the immediate risk wasn't a nuclear accident, but what Lewis identifies as people risk, the systemic danger posed by the lack of dedicated, competent staff.
And the USDA's name is just as misleading as the DOE's. Ali Zaidi, who worked in the Obama White House, he discovered its true scope was far, far beyond just telling farmers to grow stuff.
His mind was blown. He realized the USDA manages 193 million acres of national forests.
That's more land than the entire state of Texas.
It inspects 9 billion birds a year for food safety, and crucially, it runs a massive essential bank with a $220 billion loan portfolio.
It's the primary engine for rural infrastructure.
Everything: housing, water systems, electricity, fire departments in small towns all across America. It is a massive decentralized social and financial safety net.
So knowing this, the career staff at the agency tried to be as hospitable as possible. They were hoping to educate the incoming transition team.
They even stocked a mini fridge with Pepsi after they heard the incoming transition lead had lobbied for PepsiCo. A nice little touch.
But the hospitality was just completely ignored. Day after day, no one showed up.
And when the team finally arrived, more than a month after the election, it was led mostly by one guy, Brian Klippenstein.
And his background was interesting.
He ran a bizarre right-wing advocacy group called Protect the Harvest, known for its extreme anti-humane society stance.
And his focus, just like Pilot the DOE, wasn't on food safety or rural lending.
No, it was on ideological purification. He had this bizarre, singular focus on finding staff names associated with climate change. It was the same pattern: punish, don't learn.
This failure to vet and understand the mission created the crisis Lewis called people risk.
And that risk became vividly apparent 9 months later when Politico published the resumes of the new political appointees.
I remember this. The roster was something else.
Lewis details it: a long-haul truck driver, a gas company meter reader, a country club cabana attendant, and the owner of a scented candle company.
And the one thing they had in common wasn't expertise or credentials.
No, some of them didn't even have a college degree. The unifying trait was demonstrated loyalty to the administration. And these individuals were placed in crucial roles, paying nearly $80,000 a year.
With the expectation that they would dismantle the policies they were now overseeing, not manage the existing infrastructure.
Exactly. And that lack of competence immediately threatened the most essential and costly part of the USDA, the Food, Nutrition, and Consumer Services Division.
Which is what, 70% of the entire USDA budget?
It's huge. Kevin Concannon, who ran this division for 8 years, oversaw the disbursement of nearly $1 trillion, feeding millions of people anonymously through programs like SNEC food stamps and school lunches.
Concannon explains that the average food stamp benefit is minimal, about $1.40 per meal.
And actual fraud in the program is statistically rare, around 5% in 2015. But the media magnifies these isolated incidents.
Like the infamous story of the surfer dude who claimed benefits let him surf all day.
Right, and that creates immense political resistance to the whole system.
So the Trump administration's budget proposal, which suggested cutting food stamps by over 25%, that was a signal.
It signaled an intent to abandon the idea that the government should provide a minimum level of nutrition and social support. And Concannon's motivation, his personal story about government social workers helping his schizophrenic brother, it just highlights this deep, mission-driven ethos you find among these career civil servants.
It's a stark contrast to the purely political motives of the new regime.
And that political motive directly overruled nutritional science. Just 1 week after being sworn in, the new Secretary of Agriculture, Sonny Perdue, staged this public event.
He announced the immediate rollback of Obama-era nutritional standards for school meals.
And Lewis details the specifics of that rollback, which were heavily driven by industry lobbying.
Relaxing requirements for whole grains, allowing higher sodium levels.
And increasing the acceptable milk fat content. This was seen by Concannon and nutritional scientists as pure politics overruling decades of public health research, directly undermining the health of American school children for the sake of lobbying groups.
And this war on science goes even deeper. It affects the USDA's historic function as a massive scientific research institution.
Yeah, Dr. Kathy Wotecki, who is the USDA's chief scientist for 6 years, points out the department's legacy.
It includes inventing penicillin.
And more recently, saving the entire Hawaiian papaya industry with genetic engineering to combat a devastating virus.
Wojtecki's concern was about the long-term risk of eliminating this scientific foundation.
She warned that politicizing the $3 billion in research grants would lead to junk science being funded and used to support policy.
For example, politically convenient claims that high sodium or sugar intake aren't bad for kids.
Right. If you corrupt the scientific process, the public truth gets replaced by politically motivated claims that are presented as having two sides, even when the evidence is overwhelmingly clear.
She highlighted a terrifying immediate danger, too, related to food safety.
The National Chicken Council petitioned the USDA to increase slaughter line speeds from 140 birds per minute to 175.
And Wotecki said that at that speed, safety inspections become physically impossible for a human inspector.
You just can't check each bird for contamination or disease. The combination of ignorance and industry lobbying directly increases the risk of contaminated meat entering our food supply.
Okay, finally, let's talk about the threat to rural infrastructure.
Lillian Salerno ran the little box on the org chart marked rural development, which was actually a $30 billion annual flow of loans and grants to towns with fewer than 50,000 people.
This money supported health centers, housing projects, utility upgrades, the lifeblood of small-town America.
Salerno observed this strange disconnect. Many rural citizens, often the government shade-throwing, Fox News-watching voters, depended entirely on these funds, but fiercely distrusted the government.
She recalled an anecdote about a local businessman who turned white as a sheet when a USDA rep told him his celebrated business expansion was government-funded.
The USDA money was often invisible, but it was the only thing preventing these areas from just completely degrading.
And the Trump administration's response to this essential program was a striking visual metaphor for Lewis's whole thesis.
They literally eliminated the rural development box from the organization chart.
Just got rid of it.
Salerno feared this was intentional, a precursor to dismantling the whole system. Her concern was that the $220 billion loan portfolio would be privatized for Wall Street profit.
Allowing bankers to take all the money and give it to their banker friends.
And privatize essential public services like water and power, eliminating the public mission entirely.
Okay, our journey now takes us to the Department of Commerce, which Lewis expertly reveals is actually the Department of Data.
Right. And within it lies NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the agency responsible for the National Weather Service, the census, and economic stats. It has a $5 billion budget.
Leading NOAA was Kathy Sullivan, a fascinating figure. an astronaut, an oceanographer, deeply committed to public service.
She observed that while NASA was encouraged to promote its heroic astronauts, NOAA, which manages essential Earth sciences, is routinely slandered by those who want to defund it.
Her pivotal realization came after the 2011 Joplin tornado. It killed 158 people.
Despite the fact that the National Weather Service issued warnings 17 minutes before impact.
So the NWS had excellent data on the weather, but Sullivan realized they had virtually none on its citizens.
Specifically, why people ignored those timely warnings.
This highlights the immense taxpayer-funded infrastructure that enables accurate prediction.
The NWS, using billions of dollars in satellites, radar, supercomputers, provides the foundational data that makes all modern weather forecasting possible. And this capability, paid for by you, the public, is what the private sector, companies like AccuWeather, repackage and sell.
And this competence came into direct conflict with private interests.
It intensified when Barry Myers, the CEO of AccuWeather, was nominated to run NOAA.
This is the guy who once flunked out of meteorology school because he was a horrible student.
That's the one. He views the NWS as direct, unfair competition. The source material indicates he has a decades-long history, starting in the 90s, of actively trying to restrict the NWS from delivering detailed weather knowledge directly to Americans.
His goal being to force the public into becoming paying customers for private services.
The audacity of it is staggering. The private sector trying to restrict public access to publicly funded life-saving data.
Myers successfully suppressed key NWS initiatives. He even blocked the agency from creating a simple public safety app after the Joplin tragedy.
The underlying threat was crystal clear. Too much free, accurate data undermined AccuWeather's profit motive.
So what's the danger there? What's the end game?
The dystopian endgame is where access to essential public safety information becomes paywalled. And Lewis provides this chilling example from Moore, Oklahoma in 2015.
Right. AccuWeather sent a private tornado alert to its paying corporate customers 12 minutes before the storm hit.
But its own network channel, the one available to the general public, was broadcasting non-essential filler.
Specifically, videos of swimming hippos.
Oh, swimming hippos. The essential warning was only available to those who had paid for it. It's a severe ethical and public safety compromise.
So the nomination of Myers was seen as a move to give an industry insider control over the nation's most valuable life-saving data repository,
allowing him to dismantle NOAA's public mission and sell off its infrastructure. One Senate staffer called him uniquely dangerous because he understood the systems he wanted to destroy so well.
And you can contrast this with the Obama administration's focus on the massive untapped value in government data.
K.J. Patil, the first U.S. chief data scientist, made it his mission to open up all unclassified data, ensuring it was machine-readable and publicly accessible.
And the entrepreneur David Friedberg proved the immense commercial value of this open government infrastructure.
His company, the Climate Corporation, originally called Weatherbill, built a $1.1 billion business selling weather insurance to farmers.
Wow.
By leveraging publicly funded assets. His teams used decades of NOAA's historical radar images and USDA soil data information that was often literally stored on tapes in agency basements.
They digitized it, put it on the cloud, and used it to turn farming into decision science.
Advising farmers on optimal planting times, fertilizing, crop selection, all based on precise, localized weather and soil history.
So it showed definitively that government infrastructure enables massive private innovation.
And yet, Lewis observes that the Trump transition focused entirely on data suppression for narrow commercial motives. They even went so far as to bury the link to NWS weather forecasts deep within the NOAA webpage.
Because Myers thought people should have to pay for it.
This conflict forced Kathy Sullivan and NOAA scientists to adopt new strategies. They realized their high-tech meteorological competence wasn't enough if people didn't act on the warnings.
So they embraced behavioral science. They needed to understand why people weren't seeking shelter.
Enter Kim Klockow, NOAA's first and only social scientist. She discovered people cling to these local myths, like the tornado never crosses the river.
They have a failure of imagination about the true destructive power of severe weather. They associate home with safety, even when their home is directly in the storm's path.
The El Reno near miss in 2013 was a terrifying lesson in this. A TV weatherman, overwhelmed by the storm's size, told viewers that anyone who wasn't underground was doomed.
So thousands of people fled their homes and drove onto the interstate,
creating a massive parking lot disaster. If the tornado hadn't lifted by sheer luck, Lewis estimates the fatalities would have been catastrophic. The ultimate risk wasn't the wind speed, it was the human response to an improperly worded warning.
But then there was a success story in Elk City, Oklahoma, in 2017.
Right. A prototype prediction model gave the local emergency manager, Lonnie Risenhoover, a 30-minute tornado emergency heads up. And crucially, the National Weather Service used specific, unambiguous language,
The trusted human link.
a link that Risenhoover trusted enough to act on, sounding the town sirens early.
That 30-minute lead time, backed by credible warnings and local trust, got people into shelters before the F-scale storm hit.
It proves Lewis's point. Competence combined with understanding human behavior saves lives. The effort to privatize this data or eliminate the social science aspect is literally a risk to human life.
So we have spanned the entire spectrum of catastrophic existential risk today, from the nuclear stockpile's integrity and that $100 billion time bomb at Hanford.
To the quality of school lunches and the reliability of a tornado warning.
And the underlying thread, as Lewis presents it in the fifth risk, is the devastating danger of willful institutional ignorance.
We've seen the systemic risks posed by short-sighted management, the rapid loss of essential knowledge from the aging DOE workforce, the failure to invest in long-term innovation by eliminating ARPAE,
And the active destruction of scientific integrity at the USDA and NOAA for narrow financial gain. These actions are driven by this singular political motive that prioritizes short-term advantage over long-term public good.
Lewis encapsulates the motivation perfectly. It's a chilling summary of the mindset of those gutting the government.
If your ambition is to maximize short-term gain without regard to the long-term cost, you are better off not knowing the cost.
It's the deliberate rejection of knowledge, because knowledge imposes responsibility and forces uncomfortable, expensive choices.
Government competence, Lewis argues, is our collective tool for addressing the unimaginable death and destruction that the private sector cannot or will not address.
Private industry can't secure the nuclear arsenal or coordinate a national response to a grid attack or provide accurate free weather forecasts when the motive is profit. These are the risks that we as a society must manage collectively.
The stakes are deeply personal. They touch on fundamental human resilience and our collective failure of imagination.
Consider that final, poignant anecdote Lewis shares. The story of Miss Finley, who lived next to the destroyed barn in Elk City.
She confessed to the FEMA adjuster that she had prayed for a tornado for 10 years to take that barn.
Because it was the site where her husband had committed suicide, she had longed for this catastrophic, destructive force, imagining the relief it would bring.
But she failed to imagine the true risk, that the tornado would also destroy her house and endanger her life.
And that serves as Lewis's ultimate provocative thought. We are often so focused on the damage we wish to see done, the political enemies ruined, the budget cuts celebrated.
And we obscure the actual systemic risks that will eventually kill us, whether they arrive as a nuclear accident, a contaminated chicken, or a lack of warning before a massive storm.
The critical difference, which Lewis posits is the fundamental rift running through American society today, is the one between those who are in it for the mission.
People with the competence and dedication of Concannon, Sullivan, and McWilliams.
And those who are in it for the money, who are willing to destroy the systems that protect all of us for narrow short-term gain. Our safety relies entirely on the essential honesty and competence of people we often don't know, doing work we rarely understand. And that reliance should compel us all to pay much closer attention.
To watch the shorter mini-explainer that condenses the core ideas of the fifth risk, click the link in the description or tap the on-screen card now.
Thank you for joining us for the deep dive.
We'll see you next time.